Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the SportsLine Model Show. I am your host, Mackenzie Brooks, and we have once again a packed show for you. We have MLB, we have college football, we have NFL. We want to attack these early lines, show you why they're moving the way they are, and just give you some insight and education for your week of betting. But before we do that, let's take a look at another successful weekend we had across the board. College football 8-4, Jake with his player props, NFL 4-6. You know what? Shows we're human. But we go 4-2 on our totals and spreads. So overall, a very profitable weekend. And the guys who got it all done are right here: John, Jake, Steven, and Derek. So everyone has something to say for this show. We are going to start with John and Jake in baseball here. A couple money line picks for you guys and a couple player props. So John, why don't you go ahead and let's start with the Brewers.
All right, let's start with the Brewers then. And
some line movement, maybe.
I was going to say, so to start us off here with the Brewers, I mean, we made the graphics last night, obviously, and had the Brewers on the money line -148. I actually missed the line at -135, and it shot up to -148. Got it last night. Now it's around -170. But I would still take it, to be honest. So the Brewers have the 13th highest weighted on base average against lefties the last 30 days, while the Cardinals are ranked 28th. Against righties. The Brewers have the third ranked bullpen in the last 30 days. The Cardinals are ranked 17th. Nolan Arenado is now on the IL. He was playing the last time these two met in the last series, and the Brewers won that. The Brewers also have a chance to clinch the NL Central tonight with a win or a Cubs loss, and no team wants to win a division on another team losing, because then you're coming off a loss and going to celebrate in the clubhouse. So I think they really want to get it done tonight. Adrian Hauser's made 2 starts since returning from the IL. He's been great in both those starts. Zach Thompson was great when he first entered the rotation, but he has a 5.73 ERA in September.
What would you take it up to?
Probably
-185, maybe?
Yeah, -180, -185. The thing is, I definitely wouldn't go over -200, but the thing is, at that point, I would probably parlay it with like the Orioles in the money line. So this is one of those where you might not get the greatest value at this point, but I still really like them to win. So looking for a way to kind of play it would be an option.
84% of the money is coming on the Brewers, so that makes sense why it's gone up that much.
Well, but it's also a good thing that since all that money is coming on the Brewers, we're actually seeing normal line movement up, as opposed to saying the line staying still or reverse line movement. So I think that's definitely a good sign.
Right. Exactly. Scott's asking if the Mariners are in trouble, and we say no because they are facing the struggling Astros.
Yeah, I really hope the Mariners aren't in trouble, because that would mean a lot of futures are losing. But the Mariners are now 8-3 against the Astros this season. So they've been dominating them, and that also means that they own the tiebreaker. So all the Mariners have to do is be tied with the Astros when the regular season ends, and they get the playoff spot. The Astros have lost 4 straight series, including going 2-7 against the 2 worst teams in the league, in the Royals and the Athletics. They did come out and win yesterday on a Justin Verlander gem, but I don't think Christian Javier comes out and pitches like Verlander did yesterday. Javier's 1-2 with a 5.61 in his last 7 starts, and he's way worse on the road, going 4-2 with a 5.40 ERA. And what that 4-2 shows me with a 5.4 ERA is that he's getting a ton of run support, or that the other bullpen is blowing the lead. So thanks to his lineup, essentially, overall. George Kirby has struggled a bit lately. He has a 4.40 in his last 7 starts, but he's way better at home, going 6-4 with a 3.1. Christian Javier has also gone more than 5 innings just 1 time in his last 10 starts. So that means the Astros bullpen is likely going to get very stretched out. And it's gut check time for the Mariners. They have to win this game. They have to at least win this series to control their own destiny. So they lose this game and they're looking for help. I think they get it done today.
I know it's good. It's a really good pitching matchup, but what do you think about the over at 7.5? That's what I was looking at, because surprisingly, the over is 18-10-1 when Javier starts. I wouldn't think that would be the case, but I guess he's striking out guys, giving up a ton of hits at the same time.
Yeah, well, he's getting a ton of run support, which is the thing. And I don't think Javier is going to be as dominant as Verlander. If you're a hitter, right, all you want to do after yesterday is face anyone other than Verlander. It doesn't matter if the guy's throwing 100 miles an hour. Even if it's other than Verlander, different arm slot, anything, you want to face someone different. So I think that they're going to enjoy that today. And I do like the over. I think both teams are going to start to hit. I think the Mariners bats wake up, and I don't think the Astros are just going to go quiet after yesterday.
Yeah, because we have 8.8 runs in our sim, so almost 9, and the line's at 7.5. So yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks like the sim is 61% on the over. Before we move to your other money line pick, we had a question about the Phillies. Phillies are hosting the Pirates tonight. I'll move over to Steven's screen if we can look into that game.
Well, we can't yet, so I'll save you some time, Steven, because the Pirates haven't announced a starter. So I think it's going to be Mitch Keller. He's on he's on extended rest to go this start. So it should be Mitch Keller, but they haven't announced it yet. And honestly, the Pirates behind Mitch Keller and the Pirates behind any of their other starters is a massive difference.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say the Phillies only need one more win to clinch a playoff spot. So I think they're going to try to get it done today. If it's not Mitch Keller, I definitely like the Phillies. But if it is Mitch Keller, might just stay off them today.
Right. All right. Well, let's move to a game that we do know and we do feel confident about, the Mets money line versus the Marlins here.
Yeah, and so I forgot to mention the model's picks in this. So the Mariners pick, the model actually likes the Astros. It doesn't have enough value on the Astros, but I'm going against the model with the Mariners there because of the reasons that I mentioned, kind of the intangibles in a sense, the outside reasons. And then this play, we have a ton of value in the model. This is all model play. Mets on the money lines, plus 114 against the Marlins. Marlins are ranked 11th in weighted on-base average against lefties the last 30 days. The Mets are only ranked 19th. That's not far behind. Braxton Garrett is 3-3 with a 1.86 ERA in his last 7 starts, including facing the Mets and not allowing an earned run last time out. But 3-3 with a 1.86, that once again, that tells me either his bullpen is blowing leads or he's just not getting any run support whatsoever. The Mets are 7-3 against the Marlins this season, and they just won last week's series in Miami. Joey Lucchesi has made just 2 starts since re-entering the rotation for the Mets, which is a ridiculously small sample size, but they have both been great. The Mets bullpen has been rough, ranked 15th in the last 30 days, but the Marlins has been way worse, ranked 24th. And the Mets are just 12-15 in the last 30 days, but they're 8-7 at home. So I like the value in the Mets at home here. We also can't play these wildcard teams just because they're supposed to win, especially when they're only a couple games over 500 anyway.
Right. So let's move quickly to some player props from Jake, starting with Hunter Green over 6.5 strikeouts.
Yeah, so Hunter Green. So I wanted to play something that the model likes and that the historical trends like. And it looks like Hunter Green likes when he's away from Great America Small Park. The over 6 strikeouts is 14-4 when he's on the road over the last 2 seasons. We have him at 7.2 strikeouts. He's coming off a 14 strikeout game last game. I mean, Cleveland doesn't strike out a ton, but they're messing with their lineup late in the season. They have some younger guys getting more time. And so I think that's why we like over 6.5 strikeouts there. You could get it at Prize Picks at 6, and you get it at Underdog at 6. So if you want to parlay something, I don't mind that there. But at plus 112 on FanDuel, plus money over 6.5, I like that a lot. Right.
And Yandy Diaz, too. I mean, the value here, this is probably my favorite play you guys have shown, 18-7 to the over on this, over 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs.
Yeah, Yandy Diaz likes playing against Boston. He is 18-7 over 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs against Boston. He is 2 for 7 in his career against Tanner Houck, who's actually been pretty good against the Rays hitters if you look at it, but he doesn't go more than 4 or 5 innings, and because he struggles with control. So getting just minus 145, I think there's pretty good value over 1.5, especially since Diaz hits early in the lineup. He hits in the 1 spot most of the time, and so he has a lot of run scoring opportunities. And the whole lineup hits, so he has run scoring opportunities and then RBI opportunities later in the game.
Mm-hmm. Let's take one question from the chat before we move on from baseball. Big Cheesies here. We got to, help our loyal fans. Mookie Betts over 1.5 total bases for game 1. So I guess we'll head over to Steven for this.
I wonder what the juice is because it's in Colorado. So usually you see these lines for these superstars at 2.5, at least if they think they're going to go off. So I'm interested to see what the actual juice is on that play. But yeah, I mean, he should hit it. He's super cold lately though. That's been worrying me. But in Colorado, anytime you can get a 1.5 total bases on a superstar, you should probably take it. But my guess is it's at like minus 175. So
I'll bring Steven in here too to.
Yeah, man, there's something that's jumping out at me. It's interesting. His 23 games versus Colorado. Sorry, I should have split this with baseball between at and Colorado and home. So ignore this is not relevant, but it's right around 50-50. So maybe it's not juiced that heavily, John. His average is certainly higher than 1.5, but the actual rate is closer to 50-50.
So I would probably take it up to minus 150 then. I think that would probably be my cutoff for this play, for sure.
Yeah.
He's been,
All right. Well, as always, John and Jake will be in the chat answering MLB questions all show long. So while they do that, we're going to move over to some NFL. We want to talk about
Give them what they want. The Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll go there next. These are pressing games that we predict the lines are going to move if they haven't already moved already. Look at the Jags with the key number 3 and the Cardinals at plus 14 against the Niners.
Yeah. So, real quick, Arizona impressed everyone. They've actually been impressive all year, right? They're trying. Their defense is racking up personal fouls, late hits. These guys are motivated. Josh Dobbs is trying to show that he's a starting caliber quarterback. James Conner is showing that he still has something in the tank. Hollywood Brown trying to show that he still is worth marquee wide receiver money. So they're actually definitely trying, and that's a big reason why I think that people will start picking Arizona to cover because of the backdoor cover factor. This is not Denver, who just gave up entirely against Miami, right? This is an entirely different situation. So it's not. If San Francisco is going to try 100% to try to clobber Arizona, then I wouldn't like it. But we know San Francisco. If they're up by an insurmountable margin late, they're going to rest their key players to avoid injury.
Yeah, I like the idea of backdoor cover big time.
Oh, one more thing about the head coach of Arizona. I mean, he wanted 4-letter word, killers on his team. So, I mean, if that doesn't pump you up, what will for you to cover in this game?
Yeah, I stole that from him. I say that all the time. You guys know that for sure. That's why Mackenzie's here. Mackenzie's on her application is like, 4-letter word hunter. Jags. Okay, so I like this a lot. The look headline back in the summer was a neutral site game was Jags minus 4.5. And the Sims back in the summer were 63% Jags. So we actually liked them in Survivor this week. The Sims still are on 63%, despite the fact that Jacksonville has looked so miserable the last 2 weeks. This counts as a home game, but we know it's not played in Jacksonville. And going back to last year, for whatever reason, they score less at home in Jacksonville than they do elsewhere. So they've had an enormous number of bad drops this year. And Derek, I asked Derek to look up some numbers.
Yeah, so they're tied for first in the league in the most drops with 8, and that's tied with Kansas City. So
so their two defenses they faced last 2 weeks. Everyone thinks Houston is a bad defense. Houston was actually a pretty highly ranked defense against the pass last year, and then Kansas City is playing like a top 5 unit so far this year. So those matchups are actually a lot harder than public perception really is. Mm-hmm. We expect regression back to the mean in terms of the ability to catch the ball. And so Jacksonville kind of like them to put up 24 points as opposed to the 23 that the odds would project. So we see some value in them against spread. And I think our model's advantage over most other people who look heavily at stats and these kind of, advanced metrics is that we can crank our stuff out really fast. And a lot of people can calculate individual stats, but no one else can really put it into a synthesized single model that's weighting them all appropriately. We can do that really fast. So it usually takes other quantitative types to catch up to us. And I think when they start catching up to us, this line could move off the key number of 3. So if you agree with us, if you like us, then you want to get it now.
Right.
And then in that game in London, the weather is going to be nice. It's going to be like 73 degrees there. So that's going to be a relatively warm for London this time of the year.
Right. Yeah. That's nice for Jacksonville. They're not used to that in September.
Yeah.
And speaking of Jacksonville, for whoever needs it and whoever's been listening or playing Survivor, we are 3-0 so far in our Survivor pool matchups. Week 4, we do like the Jags against the Falcons here. We've liked them at 63% chance to win this game since before the season even started. Like Steven said, a lot of people down on the Jags right now, but I think this is a great value spot to use them. Falcons, people are high on their defense, but they really haven't played anyone competitive necessarily offensively to really prove that yet. So if you're in Survivor pools and you're tailing us, this is our week 4 pick for sure. But now let's move back. We got to talk about what the world's talking about. And that would be, this is great for me. Like my Taylor Swift girl world and my NFL world are colliding. And my friends are suddenly interested in the NFL. So this is a really big weekend for me. So this is a new segment I like to call Who Moved the Line? Is Zach Wilson that bad, or is Taylor Swift just that powerful among the world?
Yeah, so Kelsey has gained over 300,000 more followers in one day with Taylor Swift being there. His merchandise has went up 400% since Taylor Swift appeared in the game. His jersey sales were top 5 during the game. So the Swifties went to work in this game when they saw Taylor Swift supporting Kelsey. And then if you want to go with, stats and everything for Zach Wilson, I mean, they are the bottom 5 in the league in scoring touchdowns from rushing and passing in the league at average per game. And then Zach Wilson has literally the bottom 4 in passer rating at 66. Yeah. So he's really not that good. So I'm going to have to go with the fact that Taylor Swift is, giving them a nice little bump here. And especially the odds makers, they do pay attention to what other people are thinking. So I would
maybe Zach should go after Maya Benberry, the winner of Chasing Kelsey, his dating show from a few years back.
Yeah,
just to see if that works. Plays mind games. Yeah, our model had has value on Kansas City, but the look ahead line was only 7. So by look ahead, I mean the line that was posted before last week's game. The combination of Kansas City's offense looking awesome against Chicago, but looking awesome, and the Jets' offense looking horrible. Moved that to a reopen of 7.5, and then the 88% of the public taking Kansas City with all Swifties, doubling that normal percentage, moved it so there's no longer any value on the sim.
I can't explain to you if the Swifties get a hold of the betting market, like it will rebrand everything we've ever done.
It's like that. It's like that what happened with GameStop, right? I'm not clever enough to figure out how they did that, but those Reddit boards that maneuvered that stock to go crazy and everything, they're making a movie coming out soon. Just saw a commercial for it about that.
And because you don't make me have to go into the chats of the Swifties now, and do my research. I mean, geez.
Yeah.
That's what you do at home. That's what they're does on his private time.
If I have to do that with lines, too, I'm like, oh man, come on.
It is a powerful group of people. There's this TikTok trend going around that girls are secretly videotaping their boyfriends and being like, isn't it so crazy that Taylor Swift just put Travis Kelce on the map? And they're like, he was already on the map. She's like, but she really put him on the map. And they're like, no. But anyway.
That reminds me, I have a non sequitur, but that reminds me of when people, when I was in 8th or 9th grade or whenever in high school, even when Vanilla Ice came out with that doon, 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 doon. And some of my friends said, it's a great beat. I was like, you don't know that's Queen? You know that's Queen and David Bowie? I was threw him out the window.
Classic 90s, getting a beat from back in the 60s and 70s and making it into a popular beat during that time.
Well, yeah, it was
don't pay royalties, but hey.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, but is there another NFL game we got?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Ravens. We have a question about Miami. I didn't realize Miami was a 3-point underdog in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Not positive what our value is, Stephen, there, if you want to look at the model.
So, as I'm not ashamed to admit that we faded Miami this year and Tua this year, and it's not looking so hot. So I've quickly jumped off. I haven't gotten off the bandwagon that Miami still might be overvalued. So the look ahead line 2 weeks ago was -3 for Buffalo. It reopened after the last, usually when Buffalo beats a team by 34 points and they are back at home, this line would have gone heavily towards Buffalo. But instead, with Miami scoring 70, it moved the other direction to -2.5 only. So it hasn't moved off of that. Our sim, we loved Buffalo at like a -9 level, maybe even -9.5. It did come down after last week because, 70 points is a lot, and A-Chain was pretty spectacular. But we still have tons of value in Buffalo. I personally a little afraid of I'm going with the money line just for now, because Miami clearly, if they have more talent, more speed, motivation, better coaching, they're going to clobber teams and put up ridiculous points in terms of offense. But you look at both the Chargers and the Broncos, they're kind of a mess defensively. I don't, and even Sean Payton, his impact was supposed to be on the offensive end. And I can imagine that, he had complete loyalty and faith and frankly fear among all his New Orleans players because he was there for so long and did so much for that organization. But no one in Denver feels that way. So I don't think he necessarily has them. He's got kind of an Urban Meyer feel to me, that this guy that had tremendous success, great offensive mind, thinks that he can rule the world and everyone's going to just buy into his stuff, hook, line, and sinker. Buffalo, their defense, their pass rush is warming up. New England showed that with a good defense, you can limit the Miami offense. I don't know what the weather's like in Buffalo this weekend, Derek. Maybe you can pop up that real quick. But I kind of think that Buffalo familiarity and warming pass rush, they went from basically they had zero. They had 3 sacks, obviously most notably against Aaron Rodgers and his injury, none against Vegas, and then 9 versus Sam Howell. So we'll see if that offensive line holds up. So I'm taking Buffalo.
Yeah, we're looking good, and weather-wise, it should be in the 70s to like 75, and then
I don't want to hear that.
And 8 miles an hour wind. But I mean, the Dolphins, they're giving up like the 11th most points per game to opponents, which is 23. So they're giving up some points. So if that's against teams that are not that good, I mean, Buffalo has an excellent passing game, and plus they have some tight ends. Their tight ends, they're going to give them the ball, and that's something that the Miami Dolphins has not faced from the beginning of the season, is tight ends getting targeted for balls.
And another reason why I don't mind one thing that's worrying me about Buffalo is their run defense has been allowing a lot of yards per carry, and we saw what most of
Brian Robinson,
and it's hard to figure out and Brian Robinson hit our over. I'm a little worried about, Denver wasn't even trying to tackle people. I mean, they call, I believe the stat was 1 passing play of the last 14. Miami, they weren't trying to run up the score. They just couldn't help themselves. You're not going to not run,
right.
So I think Buffalo will look to tackle.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on. A new concept we're trying to introduce, which is going to be really interesting. This is a really insightful way to look at the line movement, which is kind of what we're just trying to educate you guys on. So Steven has it pulled up. If you want to explain how this coordinate works.
So this is kind of my Oscar speech. I don't want to be played off. I'm going to ignore any chat comments and say you're going on too long. This is like this is my opus. This is everything, a culmination of an entire 25 hours of thought. But I really do believe that this is a great way of graphically displaying what are kind of tough concepts, not for people watching this, but for a lot of people who are relatively new to gambling, and the importance of understanding why the line moved even a half a point and where it might be going in the next few days. So you can, because anyone who actually gambles with the intention of even breaking even, never mind turning a profit, you need to get every half point, every 10 points on a money line, and make sure you make the best bets at the right time. It makes all the difference in the world. So starts to describe it. Imagine these green lines represent the current lines. So if we, the model, are over here on the left, that means we're leaning towards Baltimore to cover. If we're on the right, we like Cleveland to cover. If we like the over 41.5, then we'd be up here. If we like the under, we'd be down here. So that's a simple kind of thought here. So if you like Cleveland in the over, you're over here. This dotted line represents the look-ahead line. So Baltimore coming off a great win in Cincinnati. Cleveland coming off a bad loss to Pittsburgh and the loss of Nick Chubb. The look-ahead line before last week's games was Baltimore favored and the over. The over was 44.5. Baltimore was 1 to 1.5 point favorite. After the game, it changed. The spread moves distinctly towards Cleveland's side to the point that they were 1-point favorites. And the betting line the over-under came down to, I want to say 42-ish, 42.5. What that means is we all saw Cleveland's defense. Yeah, Tennessee's offense is not good, but Cleveland's defense looks phenomenal for three straight weeks. Baltimore's offense struggled in key moments. They couldn't close out the game. They lost Gus Edwards to a concussion. So the books take off the lookout headline, repost the opening line, which is really a reopening line, and that's what happened. And then what we had next was the public here watches football and says, "Oh man, this I can get basically even money, on Cleveland." I saw that game. I saw the injuries. Then I saw Justin Tucker miss a field goal. Now he was short on a 61-yarder by a couple feet, but still, that seems like you just cut Drago. If anyone knows Rocky IV, I know I'm dating myself. Anyway, the public is what I think moved the line even further. So now all the way to 2.5 points for Cleveland. And the interesting thing was the public is on the over. The last I checked was a pretty substantial, 70%-ish betting number of picks on the over. So you would think that the over-under line would not have gone down. So you see this yellow line. The green line should not be below the yellow line if the public was influencing that. But they weren't. So that leads us to believe that odds makers, the books wouldn't adjust from -1 to -2.5 just on the public. They would adjust because people that they are considered the smart money also agree with that sentiment. And the fact that the total moved from 44.5 to 42.5 to 41.5 shows me that I think the smart money, the early action at least, was on the under. So that's where we like to put the smart money. What really counts here is the model, once again, is fading my team. So it's kind of like this self-hate thing that I have for myself because last week it was like Lamar to throw 1 interception. The week before I was like lean on Cincinnati. So yeah, it's I can love and hate myself, I guess. We actually do like Cleveland to cover -2.5. If the Ravens, I'm assuming the worst, which is the Ravens won't have Gus Edwards. He's the one running back, not only the best running back, he's the one that with good ball security. The other guys, Melvin Gordon is notorious for having the most fumbles, I think, for any running back in the last few years. And Kenyon Drake cost us the game. It was the second drive. We were about to go up 14-0, and ball security is the only thing people say on the sidelines, and the guy fumbles after a 27-yard short catch and run. So even if Justice Hill is back, his problem has also been ball security. So with that Browns defense, if we don't have our running backs that we can trust can run the ball without fumbling, that really hurts us. Plus, it doesn't look like we're going to have Oweh back on the edge because we might sign Kyle Van Noy. So, Indianapolis was able to run to the left on us, for 4 big runs in that game. So, even without Nick Chubb, we are over here. So this is the new vision of the graphic. We're telling the story of where the lines moved and why, where we like it. So if you like us and you agree with us, this is where we are, Cleveland and the under.
So the smart money, this is the stats that they're looking at, that I believe that they're looking at, and the reason why they're going against what the public says. The Browns on defense has 39 drives. They only allowed 1 touchdown. They're only averaging 7 first downs for the entire game. The league averages 20 on first downs per game for NFL teams. And then also with the Browns have allowed, which is ridiculous, negative 36 rushing yards at contact. So the league average is 94. So they are going in the backfield and tackling guys and getting contact on the running backs before they even go to the line of scrimmage. So that's the reason why the smart money is on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's Cleveland. I mean, their defense has been awesome. They haven't had to do it through a bunch of sacks. They're not. It's just steady defense and just shutting you down. The ridiculous yards per carry allowed 1.7 to Tennessee, and we know that's Derrick Henry. 2.6 to Pittsburgh. I mean, That's probably high,
Derrick
actually.
Henry, and then in that game, since you brought up Derrick Henry, I really wasn't going to do that, but Steven, if you're going to bring it up, I got to talk about it. So Derrick Henry had the least amount of yards in the half at -7 against that Browns defense last week. So
yeah, and the
that's how
Ravens,
good they are right now.
we had what looks like an impressive 186 yards on 5 carries, but that was 101 from Lamar on 37 carries. But you take out Lamar's 101 yards on 14 carries, and it's not so hot. And we couldn't when Gus Edwards left. That's when we couldn't get 8 to 10 yards to close out the game. When it was Melvin Gordon, who doesn't want to fumble, basically can't get the tough yards when he's hyper focused on holding onto the ball.
Does this make us want to lean towards any unders for Ravens running backs or Lamar himself?
It's all about these two. It's all about this guy, Gus Edwards. If he's cleared from concussion protocol, our sim is going to change. Our pick is going to change.
Right.
But it just seems like in today's age, if you get a concussion that's obvious and clear during the game,
right,
you're not playing the next week.
Right.
Especially if you're a running back, and you're taking hits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair. All right. Well, if anyone has more NFL questions, please continue to ask them in the chat because we will hop back to them. But we're going to move on to college football for this weekend, week 5. Let's start with the stability model that we always like to go with. I'll bring Jake in for his own model. And we look at our overall record for these stability picks, 20-12-1. When we put the stability model plus the SportsLine model together, which that asterisk shows, 10-7-1. Last week wasn't as strong as the week prior, but still a profitable betting trend for us.
Yeah. So I kind of liked it that we weren't profitable last week. This means we're going to bounce back this week. Looking at this list, the model, the stability trend and the model agree with Utah, assuming Cam Rising plays. He was dressed last week. They didn't need him to win against UCLA. UCLA's true freshman quarterback really struggled against that Utah defense. And we like Utah's defense against Oregon State and DJU this week as well. Boston College -3 versus Virginia. It's a battle of two quarterbacks who like to chuck the ball and run between Anthony Calandria and Thomas Castellanos. That could be one of the more fun games to watch between two bad teams. Michigan -18 at Nebraska. So Michigan's fit the trend for pretty much every game, but since Harbaugh wasn't the coach the first 3 games of the season, they technically didn't fit the trend.
Right.
And then SMU -23 versus Charlotte. SMU, we went against them last week, and we hit TCU -6 versus SMU. This week we're going with SMU. And then looking at the other games, Jacksonville State and Sam Houston State are both new to the FBS. Sam Houston State is averaging 3.3 points per game this season, which ranks 133rd out of 133 teams.
All right.
So that's a pretty rough start to their FBS tenure. Jacksonville State also switched quarterbacks to a Nebraska transfer, Logan Smothers. He's been pretty good. USC versus Colorado. We all saw what Colorado did last week against Oregon. The hype just didn't show up last week. I mean, they're just not as talented as you can see. They have good players, but the depth isn't there. And USC has depth, unlike Colorado. And that Travis Hunter injury has proved to be very costly. And Tulane, John's team, we like Tulane versus UAB. Michael Pratt is back, and so that's why they have the advantage of the stability model. Miami, Ohio, -15 at Kent State. I personally really like that. I'm surprised it isn't closer to -20. Blaine Gabbert's little brother, is Miami, Ohio's quarterback, and they've looked pretty good the last couple of weeks since getting blown out in week 1 in the Battle of Miami. And Kent State, they're not too far behind Sam Houston State in terms of scoring. Marshall versus Old Dominion. Marshall beat Virginia Tech at home last week. Old Dominion's quarterback got benched against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, or I think it was, or one of those Texas teams, and that's in the FCS. Toledo. So we like Derek's team as well as John's team, but this is assuming that Daquan Finn plays. He left the game early, or Rocky Lombardi, talking about Rocky earlier, that Rocky Lombardi doesn't play for Northern Illinois. Mizzou -13 at Vandy. We like that. And then Oregon -27 at Stanford. So a lot of these big spreads.
Right.
Yeah, I know we didn't let's say plan to talk about this, but I want to bring up briefly the Heisman stuff that we talked about last week because, Caleb, we said Penix was the best value, and Jake looked it up that in some books he's actually has, shorter odds than Caleb Williams at this point after last week, and so again, hopefully got Penix earlier. Another point is by Bo Nix putting up big numbers and clobbering Colorado. Caleb he can only lose this week, right? If he don't crush and he doesn't put up even the most phenomenal numbers, everyone say, well, Colorado's no good because they just got killed by Oregon. So, there's just, again, more steam, I think, for Penix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Sam Hartman dropped a lot after last week. Jordan Travis.
He should have gone there as the 11th defender and tackled that dude. And then he would have won the Heisman easy.
So I was wondering, so there was 10 defenders, and Marcus Freeman said we don't want to get a penalty
for half a yard. They didn't want to lose 6 inches.
Yeah, I'm saying, but it's half a yard. You might as well. I would have told one of the defensive linemen to just commit a offside.
Listen, we're not going to criticize the half Korean coach.
Not on my watch.
So
Noah Kim.
Plug it. We don't need to do that. All right.
That's Noah Kim starting though.
Kim is starting. Is he starting? He didn't get benched.
Yeah, he got. Okay. So they pulled him last week, but he's back as the starter this week. So
all right, good.
I know. Good. So that's for you.
Hey, interesting. I see a question about Houston Texas Tech over.
Yep.
I just looked it up, and I'm freaked out by this game. So someone could tell me, maybe Jake. Yeah. But if you look at the database for a second.
Yeah.
Again, the sample size of public bets that we're receiving is probably very low. But of that low sample size, pretty much everyone's on the over. Sim is tons of value on the over. The line dropped 4.5 points. So if we had my nice little grid XY graphic, the public and the models would be over on one side, and then the smart money's way on the other side. And I don't know why, in terms of over under, why it's so strong. I guess we think Houston's still got a decent offense. The public thinks that Houston's still got a decent offense. Smart money thinks Houston's offense stinks.
So this has a lot to do with Texas Tech's quarterback. Broke his leg last week. He's out 6 to 8 weeks. Baron Morton is their backup, who's now their starter. And his last game that he started, I think it was against Baylor, and they were favorites, and they lost by 27 points that game. So,
but in the model though, our total for Texas Tech is a little bit high, but the odds still say 30.5 for them. The big difference is the Houston line. We just have we think Houston's still a 30-point per game team.
Right.
Like they were on the road, they averaged more points than they did at home last year. And, in the small sample size this year, they had their best outing on the road. It's Rice. So I don't know how much that counts.
Yeah.
Texas Tech, obviously they had a tough matchup against Oregon at home, but they gave a lot of points at home. So, I can see why the model still likes Houston and the over. But
yeah,
it's always concerning when the smart money is so in disagreement.
Honestly, that's why I downgraded that's why I downgraded the over under, and I made the ATS pick an A because I agree that with our model that Houston's going to keep it close. Texas Tech won by 3 last year, I'm pretty sure, in the same matchup, it was a 3-point game. A lot of the matchups recently have been really close. Houston, they got killed in week 2, but they played pretty well against Sam Houston last week. I know Sam Houston can't score, but Sam Houston's defense was pretty good heading into that game. I think this is the 4th start for Houston's quarterback, or 5th start, and that's kind of when you see a big improvement on a new team, looking at the stability charts. And so Texas Tech's quarterback is out. If he was playing, I probably wouldn't like it, but I'm surprised the line's still plus. It's been alternating between +10 and +9, and with the full, I think this game's a single. Whoever wins is going to be by single digits. So I like this a lot.
You like those bigger spreads too, right? With Georgia.
Yeah. So Auburn lost by 17 to Texas Tech. We saw that Texas. I went to Texas A&M last week. Texas A&M's defense hasn't been that great. We saw what Miami did, and Auburn couldn't really move the ball at all against them. I think Georgia's defense is just going to stifle that Auburn offense. And Georgia has been able to coast so far, but I don't think Auburn's – I'm surprised this isn't like 3 touchdown spread, even though the game is at Auburn. So we're going with Tulane, Toledo.
Another big one thing on the Georgia line. Another concerning smart money reaction where it's like the line is open at 16. It's coming down to 14.5. The public's 80% on Georgia. So another. Someone thinks something about Georgia.
Right.
Yeah, I just think that Georgia, even if the game's close, like we saw against South Carolina, I think South Carolina is actually better than Auburn because Spencer Rattler's been pretty good, and Payne Thorne, he looked rough last week. And I think
would you recommend waiting to see if you can get 13.5 or 14, or do you think it's going to swing back the other way?
I think it's going to swing back the other way. I wouldn't be surprised if it closes close to -17.
Right.
So I don't think it goes below 14, honestly. I'd be shocked, honestly. So
what do you want? Do you want to bet me that it does?
Yeah, let's go. What
Let's get this going. I got $1. To the trading places bet. I'll get $1 that it gets to 14.
I bet you $1 that it doesn't. Yeah, go.
I'll give you 5. It goes to 17. You give me $1 if it goes to 14, and nothing if it's not. If neither threshold.
Okay.
Push it over. All right. Okay.
I'll help you. Yeah, I'll help you all start betting on Georgia.
It'll be a sweet $1. I'm gonna buy Doritos with that.
You can't even buy Doritos with $1 anymore.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I can have my kids.
So quickly, when you look at
our office, so I think the Doritos are like $3.
Yeah. If you look at Kansas, that's a great team that we like for the stability model too, with a lot of returning production. You like them to cover against Texas, what do you think about Texas, Jake? Like, are they as good as they were because they beat Bama, or is it kind of overhyped?
Yeah, so this game is interesting because Kansas won at Texas 2 years ago. Texas went to Kansas last year and absolutely obliterated them. I like Lance Leipold, Kansas coach. I think he's going to scheme something up in this game. And if you look at the box score from last year's Texas versus Kansas game, it was all Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson had 214 yards rushing, like 4 touchdowns. And so, Texas still has some good running backs with, I think Jonathan Brooks is their number 1 guy. He's been pretty good this season, but he's no Bijan Robinson. Even Roshan Johnson's gone. I think 17 is a pretty big number. I think Lance Leipold's going to get his team fired up after they laid an egg last year at home against Texas. We have Texas winning by 11, so we're not on the money line or anything. We still like Texas to win, but I think this game could be a little tricky for Texas. It feels like a trap game, honestly. They struggled a little against Wyoming a couple weeks ago after that big Alabama win. So this game feels a little like a trap line.
Yeah. They're down 1 yard per carry. So their average rush attempts is exactly the same Texas as last year, but their production is down that 1 yard carry. So hopefully that continues for us. Where Kansas is actually running the ball more effectively, running more and at a higher rate per. And their defense, which allowed 5.1 yards per carry last year, is down to 3.9 this year. BYU, Nevada, Illinois, not exactly a murderer's row of running offenses, but still.
Illinois and BYU were decent running teams, so I guess I'd say more last year with Illinois than this year. But BYU,
they held BYU to 44 yards.
Yeah, so I'd say that's pretty good, honestly, because they have a good young freshman running back, BYU.
Right. Mm-hmm. Let's take a few rapid fire questions before we head out. We have Notre Dame Duke. Question in the chat about if we have any value from the model on that game.
We have some value on Duke here. I think the line is Notre Dame -6. We have them winning by 3.
Sorry. I made my stuff too small, so I can't necessarily find things very fast. I programmed this stuff when I had better eyesight. All right.
I honestly so now the money looks like it's moving. It was at 6, now it's at 5.5. We have slight value on Duke. I kind of like Duke with Riley Leonard.
How did Hartman play against Duke when he was at Wake? He was great last year.
Yeah.
Pretty good. And he was great 2 years ago. So what's the chance of 3 times in a row?
Yeah.
But yeah, we love. I mean, I'm really impressed by Riley Leonard. I mean,
Right.
he doesn't seem to make any mistakes. He hasn't thrown a pick, and
Mhm.
he runs really well.
Right. All right. Let's take one more question for moving over to the SEC, LSU, Ole Miss.
Yeah, so the model likes Ole Miss in this game, but we really like Ole Miss, but I would lean towards LSU after watching both teams. I still think LSU wins the SEC West, and that's why I put a little money on Jaden Daniels to win the Heisman. I trust him more than Jackson Dart. Showed me an early edge last week. I went with FSU over Clemson because I trusted Jordan Travis over Cade Klubnik, and I trust Jaden Daniels over Jackson Dart here. For similar reasons. So I would lean towards LSU and go against the model.
Mhm.
So the model likes Miss and the smart money. So 79% betting LSU. Usually that would be enough to move the line from 2.5 to 3. But the fact that it came down to 2 means that there's more smart money coming in on Ole Miss. So, again, that's not to say Jacob's not smart and doesn't have money, but I actually know what he gets paid. So he better not be spending too much on this.
We should be allowed to have like a budget from the company to spend on.
I think
That's what the money's for.
I think Steven's advocating for me to get a raise. So I think that's what.
I think I heard that too.
I think the entire unit can get a raise, and then I can distribute as I see fit.
Yeah.
We can just have a betting fund.
True. When the Hard Rock opens up, just
well, you're going to get $5 from me if they who's the face wins by 17 or the line moves to 17. So I'm giving you that.
Right.
See, what was the game this past week where the line was between 11 and 13.5?
Oh, that was the Chicago KC game. That was loved it, and we were on KC that whole time. But after Fields had his kind of press conference and he kind of called out the coaches and then wasn't calling out the coaches, and everyone's like, oh my God, Fields is going to go nuts. He's going to run 30 times for 300 yards. So some people, at one, it was like, yeah, you get KC at minus 11.5, and Chicago at plus 13. And, there's all kinds of things that are beyond my head right now about how we could have managed that too, as long as they didn't end at 12. But
we could have put our whole budget on it. As long as they end at 12, would have been good.
Yeah. But we stuck with the Kansas City over 30.5, and we got that in the first half. So that was a much better way of me, after the Ravens loss is just watching that.
Yeah. It's going to be a rough week for Steven coming off the loss, but you know what? We will move on. We had a great record last weekend. We plan on having another great record this weekend. Again, keep reaching out to us on Twitter with questions, and we will see you Friday at 11 for our player prop show, which has been just as popular. Thank you guys for coming into that show. So again, we'll answer your questions all week. We will see you Friday, and good luck with your bets.